Welcome to the Pencil Bob channel. I hope you enjoy my stories.
I'm finally free from the endless nonsense, the petty power trips, and the outright harassment. But I'm not done, not even close. Those people, my former HOA board, think they can just push me around, throw their weight around, and get away with it. Well, they've got another thing coming. I'm suing the hell out of them, and I'm not stopping until they feel the full weight of what they've done. Let me back up. For 4 years I've dealt with their garbage. 4 years of selective enforcement, of being singled out for things my neighbors got away with. 4 years of watching them change rules on the fly just to screw me over. And now, as I was finally selling my house and getting out of that toxic mess, they pulled one last stunt, a cheap, illegal, underhanded move to try to delay the closing on my home. They thought they could get away with it. They thought I'd just roll over and take it. They were wrong. It all started a week before closing. I got a call from my realtor, her voice tight with frustration. "There's an issue with the HOA," she said. "They're claiming there's an open violation on your account, something about a tree and a trash can. They're saying it needs to be resolved before they'll sign off on the closing documents." I froze. "What are you talking about? There's no open violation. Everything's been squared away for months." "I know," she said. "But they're insisting. They've flagged it as unresolved." I felt my blood boil. This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate. They knew I was selling. They knew I was getting out. And they were trying to screw me over one last time. I called the management company immediately. The community manager, a woman named Linda, answered. I didn't waste any time. "What's this about an open violation? There's no violation. Everything's been resolved." Linda hesitated. "Well, according to our records, there's a courtesy notice from last year about a tree and a trash can. It was never closed out." "That's bullshit," I snapped. "That was resolved over a year ago. I have the emails to prove it. Why is this suddenly an issue now?" There was a long pause. Then Linda sighed. "Look, I'm just doing what I was told. The HOA president instructed me to flag this as unresolved. He said it's about another issue that needs to be addressed before you can close." My jaw dropped. "Another issue? What other issue?" "Something about a previous violation," she said, her voice dropping lower. "He said it was resolved with the last president, but he wants it torn down before you can close." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you serious? That was resolved over a year ago. It's done. Finished. And now he's digging it up to try to delay my closing? That's not just shady, that's illegal." Linda didn't respond. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line, but she didn't say a word. I pressed her. "Linda, did he really tell you to do this, to dig up something that's already been resolved and use it to hold up my closing?" She hesitated again, then said quietly, "Yes, he did. I was recording the call, every word, and I knew I had her. She just admitted on tape that the HOA president had instructed her to fabricate a violation to delay my closing. That was all I needed. But it wasn't just this one incident. This was the final straw in a long, exhausting battle. For years I'd been dealing with their nonsense. They'd target me for things my neighbors did without consequence. One time I got a violation notice for my trash cans being out too early. Meanwhile, my neighbors' cans were out for days at a time, and they never got so much as a warning. When I brought it up at an HOA meeting, the board members just shrugged. "We'll look into it," they said. But they never did. Another time, they tried to fine me for having a garden flag in my yard. "It's against the rules," they said. But when I pointed out that half the neighborhood had flags, including the HOA president himself, they suddenly changed the rules. "Flags are allowed now," they announced at the next meeting. "But only certain types." Guess whose flag didn't make the cut? And then there were the personal attacks. The way they treated my wife was inexcusable. She'd go to the meetings to try to reason with them, to explain our side of things, and they'd talk down to her, interrupt her, and dismiss her concerns. One time the HOA president actually rolled his eyes while she was speaking. I wasn't there that night, but when she told me what happened, I saw red. I wanted to storm over to his house and give him a piece of my mind. But she stopped me. "It's not worth it," she said. "They're just trying to get a rise out of us." She was right. They were. And for a while I tried to play nice. I tried to follow their rules, to jump through their hoops, to keep my head down. But it was never enough. No matter what I did, they found a way to make my life harder. And now, as I was finally getting out, they were pulling this stunt. I called my lawyer as soon as I got off the phone with Linda. "We need to move fast," I told him. "They're trying to delay the closing, and they're using fabricated violations to do it." He listened carefully as I explained everything, including the recorded call with Linda. When I finished, he let out a low whistle. "That's bold and incredibly stupid on their part. We've got them dead to rights. So what do we do?" I asked. "We fight back," he said. We file a lawsuit. We expose everything they've done, the selective enforcement, the harassment, the illegal tactics. We make sure they can't do this to anyone else. I felt a surge of relief. Finally, someone was on my side. Finally, I had a way to fight back, but I also felt a pang of anxiety. This wasn't going to be easy. It was going to be messy and expensive and exhausting. But I didn't care. I was done playing nice. I was done letting them push me around. The next few days were a blur. My lawyer drafted the lawsuit outlining every instance of harassment, every example of selective enforcement, every illegal move they'd made. We included the recorded call with Linda, along with years of documentation, emails, violation notices, meeting minutes. It was all there, laid out in black and white. When the lawsuit was filed, I felt a strange mix of emotions: relief, anger, determination. But mostly, I felt vindicated. Finally, someone was going to hold them accountable. Finally, they were going to have to answer for what they'd done. But the fight wasn't over, not even close. The HOA board responded with their usual arrogance, denying everything and accusing me of being a disgruntled homeowner trying to cause trouble. They even tried to turn the neighborhood against me, spreading rumors and half-truths to make me look like the bad guy. It was infuriating. But I wasn't backing down. I couldn't. Not after everything they'd put me through. Not after the way they'd treated my wife. Not after the way they'd tried to sabotage my closing. So here I am, standing my ground, fighting back, and I'm not stopping until they feel the full weight of what they've done. They thought they could push me around. They thought they could get away with it. They were wrong, and now they're going to pay. The day of the court hearing arrived, and I walked into that courtroom with a fire in my chest. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about every homeowner who'd ever been bullied by an HOA, every person who'd been pushed around by a group of power-hungry individuals who thought they were untouchable. I was determined to make them pay, not just for what they'd done to me, but for the countless others who didn't have the resources or the courage to fight back. The courtroom was tense. The HOA board members sat on one side, their lawyer looking smug and overconfident. On my side, my lawyer was calm, collected, and ready to dismantle their case piece by piece. My wife sat beside me, her hand gripping mine tightly. She'd been through so much because of these people, and today we were finally going to see justice. The judge called the room to order, and the hearing began. My lawyer laid out the case methodically, presenting every piece of evidence we'd gathered over the years. The selective enforcement, the harassment, the illegal tactics they'd used to delay my closing. He played the recorded call with Linda, her voice echoing through the courtroom as she admitted that the HOA president had instructed her to fabricate a violation. The look on the board members' faces was priceless. Their smugness evaporated in an instant. Then it was their turn. Their lawyer tried to spin the narrative, painting me as a difficult homeowner who was just looking for a payout. He claimed the violations were legitimate, that the board was just doing its job. But his arguments fell flat. Every time he tried to defend their actions, my lawyer was ready with evidence to counter it. Emails, photos, meeting minutes, it was all there, undeniable and damning. The HOA president took the stand, and it was a disaster for them. Under cross-examination, he stumbled over his words, contradicted himself, and outright lied about things we had proof of. At one point, the judge had to stop him and remind him to answer the questions truthfully. It was clear he was used to being untouchable, used to getting his way without consequence. But here, in this courtroom, he wasn't in control, and it showed. When it was all over, the judge didn't take long to make her decision. She looked at the HOA board members with a stern expression and said, "This is one of the most egregious cases of abuse of power I've ever seen. The evidence is clear, and the behavior of this HOA board is unacceptable." She ruled in my favor on every count. The HOA was ordered to pay damages, not just for the financial losses I'd incurred because of their illegal tactics, but for the emotional distress they'd caused me and my wife. The amount was substantial, enough to make them feel the sting. But it wasn't just about the money. The judge also ordered the entire board to step down immediately and barred them from holding any HOA positions in the future. She even mandated that the HOA undergo a complete overhaul with new bylaws and oversight to prevent this kind of abuse from happening again. As we left the courtroom, I felt a mix of emotions. Relief, yes, vindication, absolutely, but also a sense of closure. This chapter of my life was finally over. The people who'd made my life a living hell for years had been held accountable. They'd lost their power, their credibility, and a significant amount of money. And I knew that because of this case, they'd think twice before trying to pull something like this again. My wife hugged me tightly as we walked out. "It's over," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "We did it. We did," I said, holding her close. "And no one else will have to go through what we did." The HOA board tried to appeal the decision, but it didn't go anywhere. The evidence was too strong, the judge's ruling too clear. They were done. And as for me, I finally closed on my house and moved on with my life. But I didn't forget, and I didn't let them off the hook. I made sure the story got out, sharing my experience with anyone who would listen. I wanted people to know that they didn't have to put up with this kind of abuse, that they could fight back and win. The HOA paid dearly for what they did, and I hope their downfall serves as a warning to others like them. Power corrupts, but it doesn't make you invincible, and when you cross the line there are consequences, always. 1000% worth it, although not always possible in some areas. If my grass gets too long, my neighbor asks how I'm doing and offers to cut it for me. If the trash cans are left out, my neighbors literally don't care, but eventually would text me to offer to bring them in if I'm out of town. It's great. I realize this comes with some luck for getting good neighbors, but it's so damn nice to not have Karens breathing down my neck when my grass is 0.1 millimeters too long while I'm struggling to do anything with a newborn up all night. Also, I'm seeing the importance of talking to your neighbors, even as an introvert who would really rather not. It helps. We made sure to buy a house with no HOA, but the retired neighbors across the street are an HOA all on their own. He even complains about which side of the driveway I leave the trash bins on. One day when taking the trash out, the neighbor across the street mentioned my lawn was looking overgrown. It had been 2 or 3 weeks, but I work at least 50 hours a week, I'm back in college, and we had a newborn. I told him I had a class finishing up this week, but I'll have time to mow it next week. He offered to mow it for $40, and specified just the front lawn, which typically takes me 25 to 30 minutes at most. 2 days later, there was a notice from City Code Compliance about one of the weeds that was near 1 foot tall. It was next to a tree and by far the tallest weed in the yard. The grass was barely 3. There were 3 to 5 other houses along the street that had bunches of higher weeds, but no notice. I don't have an HOA, but that guy, I do wish I had better neighbors. I've had neighbors complain about my yard. When I was more able-bodied and working until past dark or away for work a lot, then it would rain every time I got the chance to mow. I'd get notices from the city fairly often. Now I'm retired, but my body isn't the best anymore. When the neighbors complain, I tell them if they don't like it, they can do it themselves. Nobody has voluntarily mowed my yard. Luckily, I don't live in that city anymore, with Karen neighbors trying to cause me problems. They may feel like they won, but I have over 4 acres and don't live in city or town limits anymore, so I won in the end.
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share. Check out this other video if you haven't already.